Hello, welcome to another in the series of A Chat With. Today I'm talking to Andy McFarlane, CEO of Leading Edge Aviation. Hi Andy, how are you? How's life for you?
Really good, thank you. Thanks, Ian. How are you?
Not bad, thanks. Lovely weather. I'm not flying though, which is a bit frustrating at the moment, I have to say. So before we carry on, perhaps you could just favour and give us a little bit of background and kind of, obviously I've known you for a little while, but who are you? Where'd you come from? What's your number? Where do you live?
Okay. Well, as I say in the industry, I was bitten by the bug of aviation when I was about 7 years old. I grew up in Blackpool, right by the airport, so I could see aircraft take off and land from my bedroom window. My father was an aeronautics engineer at British Aerospace Warden, so I've lived with aviation all my life. So naturally, at the first opportunity, I was 19 years old, and I went to be an officer cadet at RAF Cranwell. Graduated, became a C-130 Hercules navigator, and had a wonderful time. Had the best training in the world and flew with some of the best people. Fantastic opportunities. Following Gulf War One, I became an instructor, taking people in the ab initio phase, so right from the very beginning of training all the way through up until ready to join squadrons. And then when I went back to squadron, I taught advanced flying techniques and did some assessments as well. So 25 years in the Air Force. I left and joined industry, and during the next 10 years, I've worked with some of the biggest companies in aviation training. So I joined CAE as their centre manager at Oxford, and 3 years ran their setup there with some 350 students. Then I went into consulting, and I worked with a number of companies from Pad Pilot to Airways Aviation. I was their interim general manager Europe for some time. And then the last year before setting up Leading Edge Aviation, I was head of operations for L3. So a broad spectrum and depth of knowledge within aviation and aviation training, and it's something I'm absolutely passionate about.
Clearly, if we were to cut you in half, you'd have aviation written through you like a bit of a stick of rock there.
That is exactly what my wife says, yes.
Tell us a little bit about Leading Edge.
Well, Leading Edge was a long time in the making, some 4 years in the planning. And as is the famous quote that no plan survives first contact. So we originally, concept would start in ground school and work our way through. And we started with 2 students in the IR phase, instrument phase. And then we've worked backwards through training. But now we have completely up and running, all phases of training, 10 aircraft. So we're ready to go for any phase of modular or integrated training, which is fantastic. I knew many years ago in different companies that there must be a better way to do this, a different way of this, where we put the student at the heart of everything we do. Yes, we're a business, but it's a different way of training. And I guess it's a bit of the military sort of ethos with it, that if you put the student at the heart of the training, you give them the best possible training, you'll get the best results, and they will be your salespeople for the future. So a long-term goal and long leads, but a different way of doing things.
Yeah, absolutely. So clearly at the moment, training's not possible. I mean, there's just no flying going on. I guess there's some ground schools possible, and certainly remote ground schools possible. But what's likely to be needed? How are schools going to basically prepare to be able to train people in a post-COVID future?
Well, yeah, you're right. Ground school has been remote. In fact, back in February, we were discussing with the CAA about remote classrooms, virtual classrooms using our virtual learning environments. And that wasn't because we thought of COVID. It was if one of our students should be injured, break a leg or something, can we continue with their training remotely? Or looking at modular and distance learning. And we got outline approval at that stage back in February. So when it actually came to it, we were ready with ground school. In fact, our students at shutdown went home, and the next day we're in virtual lessons, and they've carried on since then. But as you say, flying phase has been completely different because we just can't keep the social distancing. So the senior team here have been working on a number of strategies. We did a detailed risk analysis and took in some 88 action points that we're going to do. We've submitted that to the CAA, and late yesterday we got approval. In fact, the feedback that came back was that it's the most thorough risk assessment and business case they've seen for going back. So our plan is we're instructor training next week, and then so as from the 18th, and then we'll be up and running from the 25th with student training.
25th of May.
Of May, yeah. So how do we do this? Well, we've divided all our students up into groups. So we've got small family groups as such. So 4 students, 1 instructor. Our students are going to live together in our flats or in our accommodation. So they're going to live together, study together, plan together, and then fly together. So limiting the amount of interaction they have with everybody else. Our academy is zoned, so color-coded zones. So each family group of students are going to be allocated a different zone in the academy where they'll plan from. We're allocating an aircraft per group and say I'm that dedicated flight instructor. So we're limiting exposure for the rest of the team. And for support staff, we're going to minimum manning. Where possible, everyone's working from home or working on a rota structure. Other things we've done, we're going to fog the aircraft with a chemical. I think you pronounce it Bacoban, which is widely used throughout aviation. And this is known to kill COVID for up to 10 days. It's an active substance that stays on the surfaces. So every 10 days, we'll refog the aircraft. And then we've got sprays of the same chemical to use in the simulators, minibuses, the hard surfaces on desk for planning as well. So taking every precaution we possibly can as we go forward.
So, so with are the instructors living in the family groups, or are they?
No, they'll be living at home, albeit we have quite a few instructors who are single. So they've agreed that their interaction will be with nobody else apart from their students while they're coming back into instructing as well, which is fantastic from them.
Okay, and in the little family pod groups of 4, I presume that will that still allow things like back seating if that's the way you?
Yeah, we think so. So we're going to take one group at a time coming in. So one group each week phasing in and just take it slowly because, like I said, no plan to device first contact. So we'll have to evolve and change the plan as we go forward. But we believe that that's the safest way to do it. Other measures we've done, for example, in the simulator, where we can't keep a 2-meter distance, we've put a perspex screen between the student cockpit area and the instructor station just to try and help with separation.
Yeah, absolutely. And presumably, obviously, everyone will be monitoring their health fairly closely, obviously, because
Yes, we've partnered with our wellbeing company, Wellspace, and we've developed an app. So every morning, all staff and students will fill in a health questionnaire on there about its symptoms and contact. They'll submit that electronically signed, and no one will be allowed in the building unless they've done that. And then when they get to the building, we're taking their temperature, and anyone with a temperature above 37.5 degrees, so that's safer level than Air France, for example. They're using 38. If they've got a temperature above that, they'll be sent back and monitored back at accommodation. Everybody else can come in and carry on training. So measures everywhere. Obviously, hand washing facilities throughout, hand sanitizer throughout the whole building. So it's looking more like a hospital ward, I guess, than a standard academy as we go forward.
Yeah, I mean, I realise that you won't know the answer to this question exactly, but presumably in pre-COVID days when no one had ever heard of COVID, and let's just take a normal week when the sun was shining, all the airplanes were working, all of the instructors were fit and well, and everything was going fine, you would have had X hours of training during that week. Do you have any idea of what percentage of X the new regime, the post-COVID regime might bring?
We're hoping within sort of 2 months we'll be back up to normal levels because we've now got 10 aircraft. We've got the next brand new DA42 arrives at the end of June directly from the factory. So I'll reschedule on it. And we're increasing the fleet all along. So as long as we can dedicate an aircraft to those students, we believe that we can get the flying rates back up. What might happen is that some of the students get accelerated through so that we have less students in the academy at any one time, but we can get their flying done quicker. Our basic plan is 3 sorties every week, so we're probably going to be able to get 4 or 5 in with a dedicated instructor. But again, we'll play it by ear, depends on the weather, and always the most important thing is paramount. What we do is the safety of our students and staff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't know. I certainly haven't heard anything, and I don't know if you've heard anything with regards to the CA's approach to exams. I mean, at some stage, your students and everyone's students clearly will need to take some kind of flight test.
Yeah.
Do we know how that might work yet?
No, we are in contact with them. We've been talking. In fact, Steve Rees, our head of training, was talking yesterday with a couple of the examiners and back at CA headquarters. We believe ground school exams will be starting soon, but what we've said is normally no student goes into flight training without completing all of their 14 exams. But
Yeah.
we've allowed, or will allow, students to continue into flight training without taking exams, and then we'll give them refreshers as soon as the exam centres open. As for the CPL stage, of course, most of our students are integrated, so we can do that internally. So that's not a problem. It's only when they get all the way to the IR phase where we need an external assessor. So I'm hoping, the rumor is there's going to be a new announcement from the CA anytime now, that they'll be back on instructing and assessing very shortly.
Good, excellent. So, with a bit of luck, in the very near future, once you've refreshed your instructors, which I presume is what you mean when you were talking about instructor training next week.
Yeah, making sure they're all happy back in the cockpit, that they've had some flight time prior to getting together with students.
Yeah.
We've had maintenance flights going on throughout the whole shutdown period. So those senior instructors will be going with our other instructors just to make sure they've had 7-8 weeks out of the cockpit. Let's make sure everyone's happy and safe again back in there.
So hopefully before too long, like you said, 25th of May, you should have some students, and the whole no good plan surviving the first contact will just mean an amended plan and an adjusted plan and a fine-tuned plan. So that all sounds really positive and really good. Have you got any hints and tips and ideas for people how they can if people who've recently finished, because there are kind of three stages largely. There's the people who've yet to start their training, and that's the very, very early ab initio stage. You have people at various stages within their training, and obviously, if you were, I was going to say unlucky enough, and that's absolutely the wrong word. If you had just finished your last flight pre-instrument rating flight test, you're in a slightly more awkward position than someone who's just starting their multi-engine phase or something like that. And then you've got the third phase, which is people who've actually finished training. Have you got any? How does Leading Edge work with its students in order to sort of keep them sharp and keep them in the industry? Because the industry is in some challenging times at the moment, clearly.
The industry certainly is in very challenging times. But the experts are all arguing: is it going to be a V shape? Is it going to be a U shaped recovery? Whatever shape it's going to be, the one thing they are in complete agreement with is there will be a recovery. And history has shown us 9/11, SARS, economic crisis, and crash. The industry has recovered after each one of those. And if you look at the Boeing data, it was showing that every 15 years, the distance passengers travel doubles, regardless of what else has gone on in the wider world. So we believe that still will happen. There will be a lull, but then there will be a recovery. The advice that we have is we work closely with our students, our graduates. If they need to come back in and do, keep their skills going, then we'll work closely with them to do that, whether that's a renewal of an IR or something similar. And we work closely with our simulator provider to make sure that they've got time in a jet sim prior to going to that first interview and ready to go to the cockpit. Advice just after 9/11, just the same after the financial crisis, is try and get a job. If you can't get a first officer job, try and get a job within the industry, whether that is baggage handling, working at the airport, whatever. That's where you get the knowledge of what goes on, and it gives you good experience for the future. When you're your first officer or a captain, you understand the industry far wider, and that's what we're very passionate about at Leading Edge Aviation, is that our first officers know the industry and understand where they fit in and how the industry works. It's not just they can fly the airplane. So broaden your experience and take the opportunity as is. Every cloud has a silver lining. So to take that opportunity and work with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think everyone I've known over the years, and this, going back to 9/11 days and all sorts of other things since, those that remain persistent, remain engaged, have a far, far higher success rate of reaching their goals than people
Absolutely. Yeah,
who
totally right.
disengage and move away. And effectively, that you can't really just walk away from the industry. If you want a part in the industry, you need to find a way of staying engaged in some way or another.
Yeah. And people with that passion to want to be there, yes, the actual drive is to go and fly the aircraft, but if that's not available for a short period, being around aviation, it's the thing that drives people forward and keeps their morale going, which is so vitally important.
Absolutely. Well, as you said, growing up with aviation it kind of gets in your blood. And if anyone says to me, I think I really want to be an airline pilot because they earn lots of money,
It's the wrong reason.
that's you think, yeah, no, okay, that's the
Yeah,
wrong reason.
we jokingly say that, yeah, you're bitten by the bug of aviation. It's a bit like having malaria. Once you've got it, you never get rid of it. But it's a good type of malaria. It's fun. And once you've got it, as you say, you can't say why you're so passionate about it. But that's
Yeah,
one thing that links the whole team here. We are passionate about aviation and aviation training.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your time this morning. Thanks very much for your insight. I wish you lots and lots of good luck for your return to flight training, and it's just one small step on the world getting back to something like it was before. And who knows what it'll end up like, but at least small steps are better than no steps, and certainly better than backward steps.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you for your time, Ian.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, Andy, and thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed it, please click like, whichever side that is, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Bye bye.